Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, hey. You heard about Marvin Gaye? We got him. Talking about hits there, USA. We got it. How sweet it is. We got those fine, fine super supremes. The kind of girls you see in your dreams. When you hear a thundering sound, you know it comes from Detroit town. Talking about Rosa Parks, we Center. Talking about Henry Ford, the inventor. Talking about Aretha, yeah. We got her. Queen of soul. Bob Seger, yeah. We got him. And that old time rock and roll. Slim Shady set the world on fire. The big three, baby, and the finest cars. And George Clinton's peak funk all stars. We spend our days on the line and nights in the bars.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan. 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 Detroit, Michigan.
Damn it. I have the best intros when I don't have sound. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope everyone is doing well on this lovely evening. We shifted our normal Sunday night to a Wednesday night because we had to miss it for Christmas. This is one of my favorite topics and probably by far the one that I put the most work into. So we're going to give it a shot. We're going to go through the history of the greatest city in the world, and we're getting into more of the iconic brands. Last week we had Stroh's, we had Saunders. We'll hit some more of those iconic brands and things probably people know a little bit about, and then we'll go from there and see what it brings us. So let's say hello to everybody, and we'll get right into it. What's up, Jason J? I did see that. Hope everyone's okay. It's from the last update I read, they're having trouble finding the shooters. But again, we hope that everybody's okay and got out safely. It's a good idea to keep your heads up and, keep an eye on situations surrounding you, because you never know when it's going to be bad. So a lot of situational awareness and a lot of looking up does nothing but good for you. If it is a shooter, of course, we hope they burn in hell. And yeah, don't hurt innocent people. It's not cool. It's an interesting place. Again, outside of Nashville, that's where we saw another shooting that happened recently that there was a manifesto over. Enough said. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think we're gonna see more of it as things go on and things keep developing. So, hey Digger, hello. We're not even to Motown yet, but that's a cool spot. Bad Dazza, what's up, buddy? Hey Linda. Hello, Shenny. Yeah, I screwed it up. Do I think they're gonna make Super Bowl? No. There'll be more to come with that. Recent started a new channel with Dylan from the Alternate Corner, and we do sports breakdowns and stuff like that. So if I knew where the hell the link was, I would share it with you. But yeah, so if you wanna check something like that out, we're doing mostly NFL breakdowns. We did a couple on my channel and then liked it and said, well, the hell with it, we'll start a channel. So Queen Swope, hello. What's up, Alexander? Damn, thank you, Digger. Gifted 5 Mighty Meat memberships. Thank you. I have to pull up my well, this is a good time to bring this up too. All right, I don't see the channel, so the new channel that we started. Damn, Digger, another 5? Shit. Thank you. Now I have to find my channels so I can see, so I can call out people who got them. Close. There we go. Linda Drescher, Queen Swope, Alex. Linda Dresser's burner account. I feel like she has 2 accounts. Now she's a member on both. Aaron Hack. Mexi Texi, I'm Not Obama. Harlan, Isabel Chadwick. Thank you. Linda got 2 because she has 2 accounts. She's got a burner account. Thank you, Digger. I appreciate that. So yeah, let's I'm not about. Oh, you're just typing the names out. So give me 1 second, because okay, let's see if that's better. Oh, that's so much better. I can't hear myself. Like, I have new studio headphones and I really like them, but I haven't fixed them so that they sound right yet, so I could hear myself really bad, and nobody wants to hear that shit. But you guys are all here, so somebody wants to hear it. So, a voice chat with MTM watching me here through muted. Oh, okay. So, let's get right into the history tonight. So we start at 1891. Potato patch. So in 1894, Mayor Pingree, who would later go on to bigger and better things, we'll find out later, establishes vegetable gardens for the poor, which come to be known as Pingree's potato patches. So these were like the beginning of community gardens. They were for poor individuals that could grow food and come together as a community to help feed the poor and feed the less fortunate, and people just had to put a little bit of effort into growing and maintaining things. It was kind of ahead of its time, and I think it was a really cool idea. It's one of those things that we see even today in Detroit with community gardens and community coming together to feed the poor or, feed the less fortunate. I think it's a neat idea. I don't know how successful they were. I mean, I guess relatively successful. I mean, one, they're in the history books, and two, I've heard of them outside of this program. So they must have had some reasonable amount of success to them. But just a really neat idea and a really cool way of doing things. So you can do it with full city blocks for like $20. Like you can buy a whole city block for like $20 and be just fine. So pretty cool, man. Public Works. So in 1895, the Detroit Public Schools established kindergartens. So again, education seemed to be a focus. There seemed to be a focus with different things of that nature, with really trying to educate, really trying to include everybody. And it goes even a little bit further with this. I mean, they were inclusive of women. They were inclusive of kids, minorities, and some say, that it was the beginning of woke or all that kind of garbage. But I think it was good. I think it was good for the time, and I think it was an important development in the history of the city. They were first to a lot of things. They were allowing women to vote and former slaves to vote, things like that before other people were. So they had to be doing something right at some point. So it's good to see. Also, 1895, Detroit's municipal power station begins to supply power for streetlights and public buildings. So we're starting to see power come about, and we're starting to see things like that. So also a really cool advancement, because you can only go so far if you don't have power. So it was cool to see them stepping up in a way that other cities weren't at the time, to provide power, to provide, things like that. So really, really kind of a neat experiment. So 1896. So this is going to be Motor City heavy. This is when the Motor City was born. This is when this whole episode is going to be, we'll see a bunch of different manufacturers, a bunch of different car-related things. There's a lot of videos surrounding cars for tonight's episode. But this is kind of really where it started. March 6th, Charles Bradley King drives Detroit's first gasoline-powered car down Woodward Avenue. And again, for those who've been present for the other ones, Woodward Avenue is where we have the Dream Cruise. It's where we have different things related to automotive history, and that kind of deal. So it was really instrumental in the development of the automobile, which is kind of Americana. I mean, we're one of the few countries that a lot of other countries have rail or have this or have that. Detroit really has, still to this day, no public transit at all. It's all about The motor vehicle and the public transport that is available is a bus or um, something like that. So it was really instrumental in that kind of thing. So in 1896, June 4th, Henry Ford test drives his first car using engine parts borrowed from Charles Brady King. So that's where he got the itch, and that's where so much of Ford Motor Company and uh, things associated with that started to get their wings as well. So you can see very clearly where it all kind of began. Like it's pretty evident where everything started to kind of shake out here. So we'll see more on this. Yep, you can have your Model T in any color as long as it's black. So, and we'll get more into Henry Ford, I promise, because he's kind of influential around here. So, in 1869, the last horse-drawn streetcars are replaced with electronic trolleys or electric trolleys. That's another thing that you'll see is there's a lot of electric vehicles, electric different types of things that predate. Everybody acts like the Tesla, or newer generations act like the Tesla is the first electric vehicle. There were electric cars in Detroit around this time. They were some of the first ones built. So electric's been around for a really long time, and it was very prominent here as well. 1869 or 1896, excuse me, September 8th, the new Central High School building at Cass and Warren opens. Today it's Wayne State University's old main building. So that's the pictured building on the right there. Gorgeous building. We learned about Wayne State, great medical college. We learned about them last week and watched some videos on some of their campus stuff, but that's the old main building, the former high school building. And it's just, again, it's absolutely gorgeous building, as many of these buildings are. So, in 1897, Sebastian S. Kresge opened his 5 and 10 cent store with J.G. McCrory and develops it into present-day Kmart. So present day Kmart. So Kmart is a Detroit kind of thing. Looking for the video. But it's one of those things that people kind of forget about, and I think it's probably called Kmart because nobody can say Kresge. But who am I to say anything? I can't pronounce shit, so we'll start off our video with attention Kmart shoppers. So I grew up kind of in a poorer family, in this kind of area. I remember the shit out of the blue light special thing. I don't know if anybody is big Kmart people or remembers that kind of deal, but I remember Kmart growing up in the blue light specials, and they literally turned a blue light on and something was on sale for a limited time, and it was kind of ridiculous, but yep. So I don't know if any of my fellow Michiganders around here remember that, but it was pretty dope, man. So they just closed our Kmart. Now we have no store unless we drive 40 minutes. Shit. Wow. So the last 3 times I've been downtown, and I'm gonna probably go downtown tomorrow. And I'll report back, Jason. But the last couple times I've been downtown, the people mover has been stopped. Ever since COVID, they haven't been moving it much. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Walmart. I hate Walmart, but Exactly. It was so cool. They had it was like a cop light. I don't know if anybody remembers it outside of ma'am. Um, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous looking back at it. I'll see if I can find a picture. Yeah, here we go. So it used to be a literal blue light on a pole, and it would make something on sale for a limited period of time, and this blue light would go off, and people would like very quickly make their way over. So did they? Yeah. Dude, it started in the 60s as far back as I can remember it. Yeah. I mean, that's what it used to look like. It used to be a blue like police light on a pole. Like it was kind of ridiculous, but it was neat. So, one of those things that I'll never forget. My mother worked at the first Kmart. Fond memories. So sad they tore it down. Vacant lot now. Ah, that sucks. When Kmart and Sears got together, and then Sears had its downfall, there was no saving it at that point. So, but yeah, we'll watch this video on kind of the history of the Kmart. So, yeah, exactly. So,
Kmart was born as the S.S. Kresge Company in 1899. The company was founded by Sebastian Sperling Kresge, who started his career working with another giant retailer named John McCrory in Memphis, Tennessee.
nothing over 10 cents. Huh.
The two partners eventually went their separate ways, and Kresge was left the sole owner of his own five and dime store. By 1907, S.S. Kresge stores operated in 8 cities between Chicago and Pittsburgh.
So definitely a Midwest origin story, for sure. Chicago and
With Kresge as
Pittsburgh.
president through the 1920s and chairman of the board through the 1960s, his store expanded steadily. During World War II,
Your first hunting rifle was bought at Kmart? Yeah, my first gun my parents bought me was at Kmart too. So I get it, brother. It was it was a staple here. It was kind of one of those things. You went to Kmart. I saw one. We were traveling like a year or 2 years ago, and I saw one Kmart, and I should have stopped just for the sake of nostalgia, but we did not. It was unfortunate. A vacant Kmart in Minneapolis that sat for years burned down. Most of it thinks it was squatters doing squatting things, according to the reports, but MSN won't say that. Damn. Probably. It's probably likely.
Inflation caused his store to raise prices up to a 15-cent
Oh, that
limit.
sucks.
In 1962, retail pioneer Harry Cunningham, now president of Kresge's, drove the retailer into the large-scale discount market with the construction of the first full-sized Kmart store in Garden City, Michigan.
Garden City? Is Garden City considered downriver?
Two
I
Kmart
forget if it
locations
is.
had opened by
I
the
feel
time
like it
the
is.
first Walmart store opened in Rogers, Arkansas. Both Harry Cunningham and Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, were inspired by another store named Ann and Hope, based in Rhode Island.
Yeah, it is. I figured it was. I just forget. I remember shopping at Kmart and racing my little bro to the blue light. That's awesome.
In 1965, the Blue Light Special was introduced to advertise products on sale. Attention Kmart shoppers became the announcement heard over the loudspeaker.
It's
to alert
not?
shoppers.
See, I always feel like Garden Shitty is downriver, but maybe it isn't. Those look like nice
By
stores back in the.
1976, SS Kresge made history by opening 271 Kmart stores in 1 year.
Damn.
It became the first ever retailer
Oh, don't even fuck with me. Does anybody remember the food? Kmart used to have really good food too. Minneapolis. I thought it was a decent city. I don't know. I haven't been there probably in 4 years, but I was there a lot in I would say the previous 5, 10. I don't know. I like your train that goes underground from the Mall of America to the airport to Minneapolis and then St. Paul. It was a treat to go eat something there a day out with the women. Yeah, like my parents used to like take us to Kmart for food. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's so good. Like it was legitimately a good time.
to launch 17 million square feet of sales space in a single year.
Adding machine 7777. It's kind of expensive.
In 1977,
Rise
nearly
fall
95%
about what happened after
of
Floyd
SS
died?
Kresge
Wow.
Company sales were
No,
generated
I haven't
by
been out
Kmart
there
stores.
since then.
The company officially changed its name to Kmart Corporation to reflect this.
Our Kmart was not that nice. Ours was much more ghetto.
By 1990, Kmart was the second largest retailer in the United States behind Sears.
Oh
Later
shit, I
that
missed
year,
it.
it would be surpassed by Walmart. Many of the stores had become run down and needed updating, so Kmart underwent a major new plan to revive the chain with a new logo and a $3.5 billion makeover.
Wow. Look at that hair. We did most of our shopping on the PX on the Army Post. We were so deprived.
Kmart's sales peaked in 1992 and slowly
That
declined
sucks,
due to
Aaron. I'll check it
competition
out
with
for
Walmart
sure.
and Target. From super Kmart centers to big Kmarts, and even with star power from Martha Stewart, it was not enough and sales never recovered.
How is Taylor downriver? And I don't doubt that Taylor's downriver, Taylor Tucky, but how is Taylor downriver? And I'm not buying it, AP. Not buying it, buddy. And Romulus. So the whole. Wait, Wasteland isn't downriver though? Shit, we're not gonna get into this right now. I always thought Wasteland was downriver too. That's what is the river. Yeah, okay. I thought downriver was just a state of mind, not really an actual geographic place.
By 2002, Kmart had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In
Geography war.
2003, 326 stores closed. In an effort to combine retail power, Kmart even bought struggling Sears in 2005.
Yep.
Over the next decade, stores continued to underperform, which led to more closures.
Donald Trump. And Ivana.
By 2020, both stores were still hanging on by a thread. Less than 50 Kmart stores are still open across the country, in what some retail experts refer to as a slow motion liquidation.
Huh. Saw a lot of those store closing signs. Aaron, usually I do this on Sundays, but I did it tonight instead. So. All right, so that was Kmart. Yeah, usually Detroit Sundays. I didn't do it because of Christmas though, so moving on. 1897, Mayor Pingree is elected governor. Like I said, he was going to get promoted and be a factor later. Governor of Michigan, forcing him to resign as mayor of Detroit. So, 1898, Bob Lowe Park is established as a recreational destination. So, now we get to the big guy, Ford Motor Company. So it went through some iterations. And there's obviously some really cool videos and stuff like that of the Fords. So we're going to kind of go through some of them. I don't think we're going to have time for all of them because there are just so many that are really historic. I mean, obviously he's a huge portion of this. I highly recommend if anybody's ever in the Detroit area for vacation or to visit family or to come meet Meaty. I mean, whatever the case is, whatever you're here for, go to the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn. It's 100% worth it. So, so much worth it. It's a really good place. It's and they have Greenfield Village, which is an outdoor extension of the museum where the Edison House is, and there's a lot of history in that specific area. Definitely a 10 out of 10. Would recommend coming to visit. 2008 here was the last time Kmart here turned its lights on. It was torn down and picked up by Pick and Save, aka Pick and Slave, the new building on top of where Kmart was. Oh, that sucks. So, 1898. That's my full-throated endorsement of the Henry Ford Museum. Definitely worth it. 100% worth it. There's everything from the Rosa Parks bus is there. They have a bunch of aircraft that are permanently on display. A lot of the old steam engines. If you're into old cars, I mean, it's Ford. There's some beautiful cars there. The Oscar Mayer Wienermobile's there. Huge wiener. I would definitely suggest. But 1898, Henry Ford organizes the Detroit Automobile Company with backing from local investors. It fails 3 years after only producing 2 vehicles. Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, wrong one. Yeah, it is. I'll look at it. I've touched it. Old cars and huge wieners. They had some of the new Ford GTs there last time. And it was pretty sexy. Not gonna lie. So his first car company failed, and it failed pretty miserably. So we'll get into an interview. This is Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Firestone. Firestone and Ford are kind of incestuous. There's Martha Firestone Ford. They've married into each other about 19 times, it seems. It is a beautiful city. Just know somebody before you go. It's my only suggestion. We love our own. We're just not a big fan of outsiders. So that would be cool. But so here's a short interview. Audio is terrible because it's from fucking 1900, but Edison, Henry Ford, and Firestone. Yep. Firestone, Edison, and Henry Ford in a room. Like, it's just incredible. Very true. Call me if you make it. I'll come pick you up. We'll go for dinner. I'll never have to buy dinner. So that is the interview. There's another downside to Henry Ford, or a downside to Henry Ford. He was a big supporter of the Nazis. Big fan of Adolfo. So got to play the good with the bad. Here's a short clip. It's just really bad audio. I mean, it's from forever ago. It was just really, really poor audio. I could barely hear it. So, like I said, I'm a fan of Ford. I couldn't tell you. They're talking about inventions and blah blah blah. This one should be better.
Henry Ford was
He
a
did.
pioneering American industrialist who, along with the development of his car, the Model T, invented the assembly line and ushered in the era of mass production. According to a 1999 Gallup poll, he was the 16th most admired person in the 20th century. But Ford was also a virulent anti-Semite who inspired the world's most notorious Nazi, Adolf Hitler, and other Jew haters as well, who continue to draw inspiration from his legacy today. Ford's life as an outspoken anti-Semite started in 1919 when he bought the Dearborn Independent, a small weekly newspaper. Within a year of his purchase, he began to sensationalize the news and attack Jews with hyperbolic headlines like, "The International Jew, the World's Problem." Every week, the Dearborn Independent slandered Jews as being untrustworthy, greedy, and treacherous, as controlling global politics and financial systems. The local paper started making a profit and gaining readers, growing to a circulation approaching 1 million subscribers, one of the biggest in the country. Obviously, hate sells. But Ford was just beginning. In 1920, he wrote The
Very true.
International Jew, followed by 3 sequels that described Jews as uniquely evil and dangerous, seeking to harm Christians, and who made up claims of the deadly pogroms that were then sweeping Europe. Ford borrowed material from a famous Russian anti-Semitic forgery, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which falsely purported to be the minutes of a meeting of Jews gathering to plot their evil control of the world. Ford's books were huge successes, translated into 12 languages and distributed worldwide. In its first 2 years, The International Jew sold over 2 million copies. Ford refused to copyright the books to enable anyone to freely publish them. The books remain in circulation today, with no copyright limiting their dissemination. In 1931, a Detroit reporter interviewed the Nazi leader in Munich and was startled to see a large picture of Henry Ford above his desk. "I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration," Hitler explained. Outraged by Ford's antics, Jews and others boycotted Ford products. Faced with the prospect of diminishing profits, Ford eventually stopped the newspaper's anti-Semitic slanders, and in 1927 made what was even then considered to be a half-hearted apology for his relentless attacks against Jews. Henry Ford died in 1947, and although his family and the Ford Motor Company have repudiated his anti-Semitism, The International Jew and his other anti-Semitic books still remain widely available.
Yeah, so he wasn't a big fan of Jewish individuals at all. So one more about the great Henry Ford. And this is through PBS, so there's going to be a little bit more of a joyous slant to it, I'm sure. And this is just kind of about Henry Ford just as a person and as, as everything. And then, like I said, there's a couple more, but I don't know if we're going to have time for them, but they're pretty cool. So if not, we'll do them at a later date. So this is part of their American Experience series. All I see is a ginormous penis hammering nails into walls.
2.5 million acres of
this is in
virgin
Brazil.
rainforest, the size of Connecticut, in the heart of the Amazon.
That's what we're talking about, Jason, right now.
And almost as soon as Henry Ford had wired the $125,000 that made him the sole owner of this vast tract of jungle, he began transforming it.
The Ford Motor Company is ever seeking ways and materials to improve its products. One of the latest enterprises of the company is the development of a rubber plantation in Brazil.
Rubber for tires was his stated purpose. But as with many things concerning Ford, there was a grander vision. In the
he was a
primordial
visionary of
wilderness,
his time.
he planned to build a modern utopia modeled on small-town America.
He came to believe that he was not only an economic entrepreneur, but a prophet of proper living.
Henry says simple, plain, honest, hardworking people. That's the backbone of not just the United States, it's the backbone of the world. And I know how you have to live in order to achieve that.
Ford practiced what he preached. Through his own fierce determination, he had risen from obscurity to become one of the most famous and powerful men in the country.
They own so
With the
much
Model T,
property. It's
the most
ridiculous.
successful car in history, and the groundbreaking $5 a day wage, Ford ushered in the modern world.
The Model T greatly expanded Americans' mobility, knitting America very close together at the same time that it opened Americans' sense of what was possible. So he liberated, at the individual level, the human spirit.
Henry Ford was a revolutionary. He changed all of 20th century America. We're living in Henry Ford's world right now.
But no matter his success, Ford remained restless and driven, always seeking to control what lay just beyond his grasp. The creator of an urban industrial age, he longed for the simpler era he had helped destroy. One of the nation's richest men, he despised the wealthy and feared a vast conspiracy threatened to bring him down.
Oh, never mind. It's PBS, so yeah, they're gonna bash Ford.
A hero to many ordinary Americans, he battled his workers and bullied those who looked up to him, including his only son.
What is it like to carry around so much power?
Yep.
That the ordinary wear and tear of reality that most of us deal with all the time that keep us pretty sane is absent.
Yeah, he was very anti-mass
Henry Ford
transit
liked
of
to
any
tell it,
kind.
His was a rags to riches tale.
That's cool. Huh.
He was a child genius who fled an oppressive father to become one of the most successful entrepreneurs the world had ever seen. It was a great story, but only the last part was true.
Since young manhood, if not childhood, Henry Ford had felt a certain sense of destiny, that he was slated to do important things.
He kind of looks a touch alien, if we're not gonna lie.
As a kind of heroic
Oh shit.
individual who climbed to success against the odds.
In fact, Henry Ford was the eldest son of a caring, successful Michigan farm couple. His parents expected all their children to work alongside them on the land. But when Henry found the work tedious and began obsessing over the machines that might make farm life easier, his parents indulged him. They allowed him to neglect his chores and set up a workbench for him in the kitchen.
Not only would he take apart wristwatches and put them back together, but he would study every machine he saw.
Henry's father, William Ford, understood that his son longed to learn more about machinery. When Henry turned 16, William arranged for him to stay with an aunt in Detroit, and even found Henry a job. On a cold day in December, 1879, Henry walked the 9 miles from his family farm to the city.
Beautiful.
There,
Buildings.
he would reinvent himself.
He was AP. He was a visionary. I mean, he single-handedly changed America.
For more than a decade, Ford worked long hours in one shop after another, forging.
And to be clear, he was a hard-ass worker. And I'm pausing it in part so I don't get copy struck. But So he's a hard worker, and many attribute him to building or inventing or developing the first car, and he didn't. His major contribution was the assembly line, which was quite impactful. But as we learned already, he had one failed car company, and he had already driven a vehicle. So he did not invent the car. He invented or perfected the assembly line. They were producing 5,000 Model Ts a day at one point in the early 1900s. Kind of crazy.
A career as an expert machinist.
Yeah,
By
the
time
moving
he was
assembly line.
31, he was chief engineer at the Edison Illuminating Company, the pioneer in providing
First real
electricity
affordable.
to
That's
American
absolutely.
cities.
He wanted everyone to have one.
As exciting as Edison
It's
was,
the dream.
Ford's passion lay elsewhere.
I mean, when one of your mentors is Thomas fucking Edison and you work at the Edison Light Company, like, come on. Like, it was just, it was the time. It was the time. And he had one hell of an opportunity and he took it. So good on him.
The notion of horseless carriage was in the
Yeah.
air. And he and all of his buddies, they just devoured magazines and newspaper articles. And I think Ford just soaked that up. Transportation in America was terrible once you got away from the railroads. Terrible. It was an enormous burden. I mean, if you're living on the farm, getting around on land is one of the biggest problems people have.
Mm-hmm.
At the dawn of the automobile industry in the 1890s, most people saw the car as a luxury item for the wealthy. Ford had a different vision. He never forgot his feelings of isolation living on the farm.
Ford and Hitler both made a major error. They
imagined
both
that
blamed
others
Jews,
shared
but the
his
real danger
longing
was those
for
around the
greater
World Bank.
mobility.
So the
If he
Jews?
could build a reliable horseless carriage,
I'm kidding.
Ford believed, he could change people's lives.
He wanted to really change the tenor of his times. He is going to transform the world by building a type of cheap car that everybody could have.
All the late nights and long weekends, the hard-earned cash spent on sheet iron and gasoline, the false starts and wrong turns, none of it mattered. When
Exactly.
on June 4th, 1896, Ford drove his horseless
Exactly.
carriage through the streets of Detroit for the first time. As the rickety vehicle bounced down Grand River Avenue, a friend cycled ahead to warn pedestrians out of the way.
That's
The
awesome.
quadricycle, as Ford dubbed it, had 28-inch bicycle wheels, a top speed of 20 miles per hour, and no brakes. It couldn't go in reverse and was prone to overheating. Yet wherever he went, the quadricycle drew crowds of curious bystanders. Soon, he attracted the attention of more than a dozen of Detroit's most prominent leaders, including the mayor himself, all eager to invest in Ford and his machine.
There's some people, when they walk into a room, you notice them. He has an inner self-confidence. That means the way he carries himself, you're going to notice it.
Within 3 years,
The car
of the
needed a
inaugural
cyclist
drive,
flagger.
Ford
Yeah.
had quit his engineering job. In a brick building on Cass Avenue in Detroit, he assembled a team of 13. The Detroit Automobile Company, incorporated on August 5th, 1899, was one of the first car manufacturing firms in the city, but it wouldn't be the last. The automobile industry was exploding. 57 other firms were founded the same year. Within 2 years, there would be more than 100.
There are all kinds of people that Henry Ford knows that are tinkering and playing and trying to,
I like to
produce
tinker.
a prototype. All men, all interested in machines, but all without a big picture view of what this could become.
A company spokesman hailed Ford's first model as near perfect. But when it went on sale, it looked more like a horse-drawn delivery wagon without the horse. It was high-sided, heavy, and due to problems with the ignition and carburetor, rarely ran for more than a few minutes at a time. His backers pushed for a new luxury model that was more reliable. But Ford stalled, determined to work out engine and design problems before building another car.
He would move parts around, and then he would test it, and then he would go back and move some more parts. There's a kind of both breadth of vision in that kind of activity, but there's also a kind of monomaniacal focus. No detail is too small.
At least
But
that one
the
had a roof.
overall
Yeah.
objective, make the thing better, is never lost sight of.
As his investors increased the pressure, Ford bought himself time by having his employees make parts for vehicles he never planned to build. Meanwhile, he continued to experiment.
His investors want to make an expensive car to sell to wealthy people. Ford disagrees fundamentally. He wants to create a car for the people.
He's trying to perfect an invention. In order to keep doing the trial runs and get it better, it's going to take a lot of capital to keep testing.
Finally realizing they were being duped, his backers pulled the plug. In the 3 years that the fledgling car industry had existed in America, Henry Ford had managed to squander his chance to be part of it. And he knew exactly who to blame. His investors.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll
From here
progress
on,
after this.
Ford declared, "My shop is always going to be my shop. I'm not going to have a lot of rich people tell me what to do."
He hated the people that invested in him, loathed them.
Mm-hmm.
These were the scum of America to Henry Ford. These are the people that looked down on the slang of the farm and the kinfolk of his that had worked the land for generations. He did not like these people.
All right, so that is the first episode of that. I couldn't find any more, but I know there more exist. But that gets us to where we need to, so it was almost a perfect cutoff. So that was his first company. His first company failed, partially because he's kind of over it, and in part, he was a perfectionist and wanted it to be a certain way. So, Simple History did a series on Henry Ford. Huh. I'll check that out then. So a year later, so we have 1898 and then 1899, Ransom E. Olds opens Detroit's first automobile manufacturing plant on East Jefferson near Belle Isle. Oldsmobile is another car company that was around the same time. So yeah, we're gonna watch a little bit on Oldsmobile. So Oldsmobile is more prominent, I guess, more famous in like the Lansing area, at least from what I briefly know about the situation. I've heard much more history and seen much more history in the Lansing area than I ever have in Metro Detroit. Could just be a me thing, I don't know. But yeah, so Oldsmobile, sure people have heard of that. So plus this is an old video and it makes it cool. I appreciate it, brother.
Going through the photographs and home movies of R.E. Olds can have a peculiar effect. A portrait starts to emerge. At first glance, it all seems straightforward. But if you look again, you'll see something you missed the first time. A smiling glance, a mischievous twinkle of the eye, and slowly, bit by bit, you can actually feel his personality become almost tangible in your mind. Unchanged by the years, and still just as playfully strong as ever.
Yep.
The first thing I ever remember hearing about R.E. Olds was his generosity. He would do anything to help those less fortunate than himself, from turning the old Sparrow Hospital building in Lansing into a daycare center for working mothers, to personally guaranteeing the assets of many banks during the Great
Working
Depression,
mothers.
saving thousands of people from losing all of their money. R.E. was an unprecedented source of generosity. His wife Meta was a great influence, tempering his playful nature and drive to create with an obligation to give back to the community. R.E. later went on to create Ransom Fidelity, a charitable organization dedicated to serving the community through donations to small grassroots organizations.
Yeah, Oldsmobile, they were kind of a, I don't know, kind of a
R.E. was
boutique
one of the few
manufacturer.
truly great men of our century because he was keenly aware of both himself and his surroundings. He knew when it was time to work, and he knew when it was time to play. He also knew
Gotta
the
have you
importance of
and
leaving work
MTM
after
in the
office.
same VC you sound alike, and
To
I'm not
escape
the
the
only one who
stress of
knows.
everyday life, he traveled all over the world in a time when such journeys meant spending months away from home. He took his family with him, visiting Sweden, Egypt, China, and wherever else his heart took him. R.E. didn't want to sit in his study and read about the wonders of the world. He wanted to see them for himself. The single most telling thing in his photographs is the fact that he's always smiling. In
He was
every
just a dude
single
loving
picture,
life.
R.E. is smiling.
Just absolutely
And
loving
it
it.
isn't that photograph smile we've all practiced as kids. All of them are real, genuine smiles. Even most of the other men in the pictures with R.E. aren't smiling. R.E.'s life had at least one pervasive theme. When his instincts were in conflict with societal convention, he had no problem following his gut. He embodied the very essence of the American dream. The man who can rise up to create an empire and change the world forever, succeeding by his raw talent and on his own terms. R.E. was simply a different spirit. He had the laser-like focus that makes for the best of entrepreneurs. His always working mind constantly generated the ideas that fueled his businesses to success. At the same time, however, he loved to relax and enjoy life. Though not always obvious, R.E. also had a very playful side. His kind and caring nature awakens memories in us all of the grandfather who, despite his years, took the greatest joy in trying to keep up with his mischievous grandchildren. R.E. was an innovator in every sense of the word. Socially, technically, fiscally, and industrially, he was always one step ahead of his contemporaries. One of R.E.'s largest endeavors was the creation of Oldsmar, a resort community in Florida geared towards younger middle-class families. He bought the land and designed the city, but found that the machinery he had brought down from the north to clear the land was not built to handle the southern terrain. In response,
Yeah, for sure.
he simply redesigned his machinery to meet the challenge. However, after spending $4.5 million and at least 7 years trying to bring his dream to life, he decided to give up the venture, as his investment had proven too costly to pursue further. The amazing end to this chapter in the Old saga came years later, as land development concepts like Oldsmar caught on. What makes a man great? When looking at a life as momentous as that of R.E. Olds, it at first seems difficult to apply the same standards by which most people are viewed. You can't use the same eyes to see him as you'd use to see others. You have to step back. Look at the big picture. Take it all in. And when you do, a portrait starts to emerge. Slowly, bit by bit, you can actually feel his personality become almost tangible in your mind.
Okay, I'm gonna cut it off there because if not, we're not even gonna make it out of out of 1900 this go round. There's some better ones coming up. So Oldsmobile, yet another car company, one of the more successful ones. It's, compared to the other 100 that existed at the time in 1899, 1900. There was definitely dropped something. There was definitely a lot of car companies, and a lot of them failed, but they were one of the more successful from the time. So with all these automobiles around, you had to have an auto show, right? This is not the 1899 auto show. They actually have some video from it. Some people have said it's late 1899. Some say it's early 1900. The actual video says both. So it says it was produced in February 6, 1900. So I don't know if that's when it was made, but whatever. Besides the point. So William Metzger and Seneca Lewis organized Detroit's first auto show. They rent the Light Guard Armory and showcased 4 cars, 2 electric and 2 steam powered. So again, we're back to there were electric cars in Detroit before Tesla. So, like I said, February 6, 1900, from Thomas Edison Incorporated. And this one's a very short. But this was the auto show. This was that was it. And there's the other 2. And I think that they just went around, to be honest. So not much going on. So I think they just kind of, I don't know. But yeah, supposedly there was 4. Was this newfangled horseless carriage witchcraft? Yes, witchcraft. So there's a horse. There's another horse. They're passing a horse. Fuck you, horse. So completely contrary to like what we've seen with the Woodward Dream Cruise and stuff like that. So that's what I get, and then maybe you get both sometime in that December of 99 to early part of 1900. Exactly. So just kind of a cool little nod to history. But so that was the first auto show, and we'll get into a little bit further the auto show as we get into further episodes and probably even later today, but we'll see. So in 1900, Detroit continues to grow. Now that it's a manufacturing capital, there's lots of new businesses, lots of new things happening and going on. So it's a desirable location for probably the first time. So 1900, Detroit's population is 285,704 people in the year 1900. It's the 13th largest city in the United States at the time. Also in 1900, nearly 12% of Detroit's population doesn't speak English, the highest percentage in the nation. I'd venture a guess that more than 12% don't speak English now. Have you been to Mexican Town? Southwest Detroit. There's probably 12% that still don't speak English. So also in the 1900, another thing, it wasn't all just automobiles and sexy time. Detroit is the world's largest manufacturer of heating and cooking stoves. Other big industries include shipbuilding, cigars, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, beer, rail cars, and foundry and machine shop products. Yeah, I mean, there were immigrants coming in from everywhere. It was a melting pot. That's why they built the stoves. That wasn't a you joke, Bobby. Don't laugh at that. That's why. Okay, so I put the same thing twice. Detroit is. I think I wanted to put this picture too. I think that's why I ended up doing it that way. So that's an early ad, and we're gonna go into Oh, I already shared it. That's why. Oh God, it's so good. Armando's is so good. So good. So good. I'm sorry, Linda. I lived in Southwest for a while too. So cast iron stove. So this is just a slice of what you can do at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn. This is one of the Greenfield Village exhibits, and it kind of breaks down and teaches you a little bit about the stoves and that kind of thing. But that was the major manufacturing of the time. So,
way back, there was a time when cooking didn't involve stressful steps like peeling back the container cover or poking holes in the film covering your chalupa. Then there's the whole figuring out how to punch in 50% power for 4 minutes before stirring and continuing for 2 more minutes at full power. I'm talking about the historic era of the stove. Yes, the stove. Sure, we still refer to the top of the oven as the stove, but seriously, people, those are burners. So let's travel back in time to take a look at how our great-grandmothers used to cook. The idea of cooking over an open fire has a certain romance to it, as does a kettle stewing in a fireplace. But when those were the only means for preparing hot meals, the practice was not one of leisure, but instead danger and a bit of brawn. In the mid-1800s, the cast iron cook stove would come into homes, bringing with it convenience and culinary comfort.
The cast iron stove was the major technological innovation in the kitchen during the 19th century.
The Henry Ford's curator of domestic life, Jeannie Miller, and I sat down for a stove-side chat. When did the first cook stoves come into existence?
There are cook stoves available in the 1820s and 1830s. By the 1850s, a lot more people are using them. Actually, the White House didn't even have a cook stove until 1850.
It's 1950.
Yes.
Did the stove and the oven always go together?
Yes, there was stove burners, as we would think of them, and the oven. As you see from this 1870 cook stove, the oven is in the back, and that's really great because
I thought this was the oven.
No, that's the firebox. That's where you put the wood. And then most cook stoves in the mid-19th century would have 4 to 6 what they called boiling holes. We would think of them as burners.
As burners.
Yeah.
And despite its added convenience,
oh yeah,
there
they were
was still
so beautiful.
plenty of labor
Like, we
required.
don't make anything like that
You had to chop
anymore.
enough firewood to fuel the cook stove through the year.
It might take you about an hour to clean your stove every day.
Why?
Because you had to
Jeez.
remove all the ashes from the firebox. And then, of course, you get a lot of soot. And then, because they were cast iron, they could rust.
So cleaning out the ash, wiping down the soot, polishing the cast iron, there's a lot that goes into this.
There is a lot that goes into it. However, it was still way more convenient than cooking in a fireplace.
There still was a lot of guesswork involved, say, in baking bread, right? I don't see a temperature control here.
Yeah, there were no temperature controls on these stoves. So you had to develop the sense of how hot the stove was.
Those innovations would come too. And around the turn of the century, gas stoves took off. Once homes were powered, electric stoves gained popularity as well. And while technological advancement continues to feed our human need for innovation, it's what we do with it that matters.
They have excellent, also, Greenfield Village, they have excellent frozen custard, too, if you're ever in the area. All right, I'll stop plugging Henry Ford because they're not paying me. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people probably caught fire at that point. I grew up knowing what 350 degrees looked like. We had no thermostat on our oven. Wow. It was different, and it was such a more difficult time to just do normal things, and I don't know, it's pretty magnificent that we survived it largely. So, we go to the lovely year of 1901. July 24th, Detroit celebrates its bicentennial with parades and a recreation of Cadillac's arrival. So, 1701 to 1901, we have the bicentennial. I couldn't actually find footage of the 1901 bicentennial. Didn't look terribly hard because I have a bunch of other videos for this week's segment, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cool. We just passed 300 years, and in 2001. Are you a member? I'm a member still, I think. I have to ask my wife, but God, it's so fun. It's worth going to. I know it's a stupid law. Oh God, it would have been so hot. So hot. Like, it would have been ridiculous. I don't know how people survived, but some more Oldsmobile. It was a different year, so I didn't want to put it with the other one, but it, pretty much same. 1901, Ransom E. Olds produces the first practical American car. It can reach speeds of 18 whole miles per hour, and it costs about $650. Oh, your company's owned by Ford? Oh, that's cool. Huh. So about $650. That's what it looked like. And again, it was much more of a kind of like an upper class car, but still somewhat affordable. He seemed to be much more interested in having fun than he ever did in building effective cars, in my opinion, from what I've read about him. So I'd go 18 in that thing. What's up, Husky? It kind of looks like a sled. I think it'd be far more effective if you just pulled the bottom off and just used it as a sled, but it's just me. Also in 1901, the Detroit Tigers were established as a charter member of the now Major League American League in 1901. They played their first game as a Major League team at home against the Milwaukee Brewers on April 21st, 1901. With an estimated 10,000 fans at Bennett Park. So Tigers is one that we kind of delved into already. Went through the different ballparks, and they were established much earlier. But they officially became the Tigers in 1901 and started playing in the American League, which they play in now. And then, in 1901, Henry Ford establishes his second automobile company called the Henry Ford Co. So, this is one of the ones that I wanted to get to. This one's a little bit longer, and we'll probably end up ending on this particular video, but I thought it was a good one. It's, again, an older one. So let me just check. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start to see where we're at the end of it. But this is History of the Automobile Ford Motor Company documentary. So we'll watch this one through too.
The old road was not only a road, it was a way of life, slow and often rough. If you lived way out in the country, 15 or 20 miles away from the railroad station, you had to get up before dawn to catch the 9:30 train. You harnessed up the reliable horse, and for the next 2 hours, the carriage went creaking down the old familiar road while the countryside moved slowly past. If you were leaving the farm for good to go to the city, you had mixed feelings on that long ride to the station. It's not easy to pull up roots and start a new kind of life. You saw the faces of old friends as you passed their house, waving goodbye, and you felt sad at leaving them. But you saw, too, how old and tired they looked, worn out by hard work, locked on the land. A woman looked 50 before she was 35 with all she had to do. In a way, you were glad you were leaving. You passed the old schoolhouse where you'd gone as a kid, and you remembered the long miles you'd walked morning after morning to get there. That final run to get inside before the bell stopped clanging. You passed the doctor's buggy drawn up in front of someone's house, and you'd remember the terrible night your mother lay upstairs in the bedroom, sick, and the long hours of waiting for the doctor to come. The roads were bad that night. When he finally arrived, there was nothing he could do anymore. After that, you never saw the doctor's buggy without wondering if he'd gotten there in time. You passed the church, too. But you knew you were not leaving God behind. He would be with you in the uncertain days that lay ahead. Still, there were good times to remember as well as bad, and by the time you reached the station, you wondered if you were making a mistake. Some people might call you a darn fool to leave a fine farm and go running off to the city where it was noisy and dirty, full of pickpockets and swindlers and women who painted their faces. But there were things you wanted to do couldn't get done on a farm. If you were interested in machinery, for instance, or wanted to tinker with engines that ran on gasoline, the country was no place for you. You had to go where other men were doing this kind of thing. Train was late, of course. You could have slept another half hour. You stood and looked down the empty tracks, waiting. Somewhere out there beyond the horizon lay the city where your destiny waited. The people who lived in the city stayed in the city. They walked the hard pavements till their feet ached. If a person were well-heeled, he took a cab. If a nickel was all he could afford, he took a streetcar and got there an hour later. The fastest thing in town was the fire engine. In the good old summertime, the streets got hot as ovens. Vegetables and people wilted under the blazing sun, and the kids got hard-boiled. Everybody panted and sweltered and longed to get away from the clanking thunder of the elevated trains and the clatter of wagon wheels on cobblestones. Far uptown lay the ballpark. And if you went for a long boat ride down the bay, you finally arrived at an amusement park where there were roller coasters, shoot the chutes, camels to ride, and a real beach where a kid could get to swim in the ocean. But it took the better part of a day to get there and back, so you settled for the nearest fire hydrant on your block. Bicycles were all the rage. On Sunday afternoons, you could pedal out past the city limits and see real trees and grass and hear a bird sing. That was fun. As long as your legs held out, you could go wherever you wanted, right up to the end of the road, that is. A few miles out of town, the paving ended, and from then on, bicycling was no pleasure. A lot of people accepted the end of the road and turned back. But the bicycle wheels had a greater destiny. In Detroit, a man named Henry Ford, who had left the farm and come to the city to tinker with machinery, was making what he called a quadricycle. It looked like a buggy, only it had no shafts for a horse to be harnessed to. I was going to come from a gasoline he'd made himself. He did everything himself, working nights and holding down a daytime job with the Detroit Illuminating Company. It took a long while to make this machine, but Henry Ford stuck to it. Finally, it was ready. One winter's night, he pushed it out for its first trial run. Up and down the dark, empty streets ran the little quadricycle. Past the sleeping houses, ghost-like and unreal, flitted the shape of things to come. If anybody had waked up and looked out the window, he probably would have thought he was still dreaming. That night, history was made. The street was never the same again. It didn't happen overnight. The going was rough for those early cars on the American road. We should pause to remember and admire not only the adventurous men who kept on making automobiles, but the reckless few who had courage enough to drive them. Some people thought that the sail wagon had a more promising future than the automobile. Built like an ice boat on wheels, it could hit over 50 miles an hour if the wheels stayed on. Of course, it took a land-going sailor to operate it, and on a public road, it really stopped traffic. While people were still letting the wind blow them in various directions, men like Henry Ford were putting their faith in the gasoline engine. He built a big one and put it in a racing car called the 999. It was a huge, heavy monster, and it spent most of its time in the shop getting tuned up. Nobody at the time probably realized it, but the 999 had a prophetic look. This was no horseless carriage. It was long and low and powerful, built for speed. In a crude but unmistakable way, it forecast the shape of cars to come. On October 25th, 1902, Barney Oldfield set a world's record in the 999. He drove it a mile a minute, and this phrase ushered in a new era. Cars now became a more and more frequent sight, particularly in cities. By 1903, there were more than 1,000 automobile manufacturers in the United States. And in that year, the Ford Motor Company was founded. The first payroll didn't take much bookkeeping. The first car of the new little company was called the Model A. It had a 2-cylinder, 8-horsepower engine, and it could go 30 miles an hour. It sold for $850, a lot of money in those days, and its owners were chiefly in the upper brackets. It was smart and fashionably designed, with a door in the rear like a pony cart. And it cranked from the side, a good safety measure designed to prevent the cranker from being knocked flat and run over if the car started prematurely. Everybody admired it, but only the more daring could be persuaded to ride in any kind of a motor car. The farmer was a forgotten man during this early period. He saw occasional cars go by on the rough roads, but these strange mechanical contraptions seemed out of place in the country. They were for city people, not for him. He kept on grooming his old reliable horse and waited. And suddenly, one day, it appeared. It was called the Model T. It had a 4-cylinder, 20-horsepower engine and a planetary gear that defied the laws of science. Maybe it didn't look classy, but it could take a beating on rough country roads and still get you there. It was a farmer's car, built by a farmer. There was only one thing wrong with it. It cost $850. Millions of citizens looked at the Model T and licked their chops. There it was, the car of their dreams, but they couldn't afford it. Back in Detroit, Henry Ford wondered how he could bring the price of the Model T down to where everybody could buy it. He figured that the more cars he made and sold, the cheaper he could sell each one. And he went to work on this idea. In those days, each car was built from the frame up on stationary wooden horses. There was a different crew for each car, and the same crew stayed on the car until it was finished. That meant duplication of effort and a lot of time wasted. So they tried moving the men from car to car. Each man had a special job to do, and as soon as he finished it, he moved on to the next car and did the same thing there. That was better, but it still took 12.5 hours to assemble each Model T. Henry Ford watched it for a while, and he had an inspiration. Instead of moving the men past the cars, why not move the cars past the men? So on one hot August morning, they tried it that way. A husky young fellow put a rope over his shoulder, and Henry Ford called, "Let's go." And at that very moment, as the workmen began to fasten the parts onto the slowly moving car, the assembly line was born, a technique that was to revolutionize mass production all over the world. Once they found that the idea would work, they began to improve it, refine it. They rolled the chassis down a single line of track, pushing it from crew to crew. And the more expert they became at this new method, the faster the cars came off the assembly line, and the price of the Model T began to drop. They tried the same idea on all the various parts of the car and created what were called sub-assemblies. Each man on the line became a specialist. He did one thing, and he did it perfectly, then passed the work along to the next man. Minute by minute, production was winning the battle against wasted time and wasted effort. Parts were fed to the workmen by gravity slides so they wouldn't have to stop and wait for new parts. Then they put the parts on moving conveyor belts. This was a great step forward because now they could regulate the flow of work and keep it moving at a constant rate of speed. And the conveyor belts grew longer and more complex as they moved the work from place to place in the huge shops. They became fantastic masterpieces of planning and engineering. But the battle against wasted time and wasted effort was being won. The cars began coming off the assembly line at the rate of one every 40 seconds. And what Henry Ford had foreseen happened.
That's so fast for that time.
The assembly line drove the price of the Model T down from $850 to $300. Now everybody could have one. What a wonderful feeling it was to own your own car. The Sunday afternoon drive became a national pastime. Off you went to visit Uncle Obadiah with the car bouncing along like a boat in a choppy sea, jolting your teeth out every time it hit a bump. Mom would keep saying, "Papa, don't drive so fast."
Yeah, they romanticize a little bit, don't they?
And when you suddenly met another car coming the other way on those narrow roads, oh boy, that was a thrill that stood your hair right up on end.
So I'll stop it just for, this is just like driving in the UP now. Shit, you got to pull off and wait for somebody to pass. They're just old 2 tracks. So you can imagine what it was like by driving through the trails in the UP. Still, I keep telling you it's 100 years in the past. Yeah, I have. Paquette and River Rouge. The Rouge tour is obviously now incredibly commercialized, but that's another thing that you can do through Henry Ford is the Rouge tour. So it's a little bit easier if you're vacationing to my neck of the woods. You can I know you're already here, but for anybody who's not in the area, they do a tour out of there all the time. So oh shit, where did I go? I got to put around in one of these old models a long time ago, use a magneto. That would be really cool. I've seen them. I've never been in one. But I've seen plenty of them around at car shows or again at Henry Ford. So they're neat. They're really neat. They could take a beating though. Like that one.
At first, just being able to drive a car was enough, but pretty soon the novelty wore off and people began to get angry at the bad roads. So they started to make the roads better. In every state all across the nation, men and machines went to work. The rutted mud gave place to smooth ribbons of pavement, wide enough for two cars to pass each other. And the roads became
It's almost like it was real metal back then.
Direction. And down every road ran the Model T, panting and quivering, always eager to go farther. And now an interesting thing began to happen. People from the cities began riding out into the country, and people from the farms began going to the city. And
well, like I said, this
sections
is
of the
a
population began to get acquainted with each other for the first time.
this is a longer video,
No
but I
road
thought it was a
maps
good one.
in those days.
So
If you got lost, the kindly natives would give you directions so complicated you couldn't find your way home with a compass.
yeah.
Everything was down the road a piece. If you got lost, you stayed lost.
And that's where if you ever get directions in Detroit, they'll tell you cross streets, and that's it. Like none of this address bullshit. It's on X and X, like, and you can figure it out from there. But yeah. Puttyman made a boatload of money. Final Fab and assembly guys were wealthy back in the day. Yeah, I mean, it used to be desirable. Not that it's not now. I mean, the automotive manufacturers, they make a boatload of money still with the unions and collective bargaining and all that shit. So I don't actually know why Willow Run's built on an L shape. So I'm sure you know of what's it? Yankee Museum. So when we get into further episodes, we get into the B-29, and I'm actually doing a great time to announce it. I'm doing an in the field interview with one of the gentlemen at the Yankee Museum, and we're going to do a tour of the museum and learn a little bit about the bomber plant that was in Ypsi. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be 2 weeks from now. So that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's sweet. That's so neat. Don't blame them. Yeah. So my great grandfather worked for Fisher Body in Lansing, and then my uncle, he did body work at Ford, paint and body work. So yeah, I mean, I get it. There was a lot of it. So that's awesome. I didn't know that, huh? And that's part of why I'm doing this series, because I've learned so much that I didn't know, and got to expand on so much that I did know. It's just been a lot of fun for me. That's why it's one of my favorite ones that I've done so far. So, well, that's cool.
Everywhere you looked, you saw the Model T. It became a part of the American scene. It took the housewife to market. It brought the doctor to his patients in time to save their lives. It saved time and speeded up business. Filling stations sprang up by the thousand, and a whole new industry in gas and oil was created. Not only did it save time, it gave the average citizen a wonderful new way to spend the time he saved. Now, for the first time, Americans were able to travel inexpensively across their own country in their own cars and see the grandeur of their inheritance. They could visit the great national parks which had been created for the people, but which so few people had ever had an opportunity to see. Now the whole family could get away from the noise.
So they cared more. So, and that's an interesting topic, Bobby. It's like they gave a shit more. It's like they actually cared about the work, and they actually cared what they put in and put out to the public. Now we don't get that same pride. There's not the pride of craftsmanship. It's just get it done cheap, and get it out. And it's kind of frustrating because they made stuff so much more beautiful and so much more intricate back then. Yeah, pride in the products. I'm hoping to this summer, hopefully. It's part of the plan. So, but I never have. Never been to Northern California. But yeah, 100% pride in what they were producing. So,
As in the heat of the city. People could go camping over a weekend and be back to work Monday morning with renewed energy. They could go to the mountains, or if they preferred the beach, the faithful Tin Lizzie would carry them to the sea's edge. There were many new images in the people's minds now, things they had seen along the American road. Wonderful things they would never have been able to see at all without the motor car. There was a new look in people's faces, a look of discovery and wonderment and pleasure.
they just make you happy.
A new world had been opened up for them. The nation took the Model T to its heart. People called it a flivver, made jokes about it, loved it. They said it could go anywhere except in society.
That sketch. No No, thank you.
Hollywood comedians had a field day with it. The Model T was more than a motor car. It was the symbol of an industrial revolution. For mass production and the assembly line were now able to bring the price down on all sorts of products, put them within everyone's reach. Mass production also created thousands of new skills, new jobs at higher wages. And under this powerful stimulus, the nation's economy expanded enormously. What about the man who was chiefly responsible for all this? What was he like?
That looks so unsafe.
Let's take
Makes
a
it
look
more
at the
fun.
family album. Here he is at his home, Fairlane. Walking with his wife, Clara, through the garden. Laughing with a friend over a cartoon of himself. On the ice-covered pond with his grandchildren. Here he is, back on the land, tinkering with one of the old steam engines. He was always wondering how he could take the burden of work from the back of the farmer and put it onto the machine. Maybe it was at times like this that the idea of the tractor came to him. The tractor was the realization of one of his oldest dreams. Here he is in his office, having a conference. The man whose $5 day startled the industrial world.
It's like
This
America.
is a family scene. Son Edsel
Rubber.
starting out with some
Metal.
friends on a transcontinental trip, getting a big send-off. A drive like this was quite an adventure in those days.
Sometime
He
I
liked to
could.
dance country dances.
Maybe I'll do one on a science stream at some point with Bri.
A grandchild, Henry Ford II. Showing his grandchild a baby bird with Mrs. Edsel Ford watching. Still a farmer, teaching his grandchildren, Henry II and Benson Ford, to love the soil. On anniversaries and other state
So do I.
occasions, he'd get out the old quadricycle
So
and
do I,
drive
buddy.
it round Fairlane with his wife, Clara. What memories it must have brought back.
Licking cars and getting erections. That's how my chat does it. What's up, Queen?
Sometimes
basically
he'd
how
like
they
to go
still generate
camping with some of
electricity.
his old friends. The bearded man is John Burroughs, the naturalist. On the right is Harvey Firestone. He still knew how to swing an axe. Had his own ideas about cooking, too. That's Edison in the background. Vigorous men with vigorous minds and healthy appetites. They used to have a saying, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. Whatever he did, Henry Ford always kept a certain rustic simplicity, a rugged quality that nothing could alter or soften. Burroughs had always looked down his beard at the Model T, called it a noisy device that frightened the birds. But finally, even Burroughs overcame his prejudices. The man behind the legend. These are men whose ideas changed our way of life and made it better. Father and son. They walk side by side, reviewing the past, planning the future together. How quickly it all had happened. In less than 25 years. Henry Ford. He personified the American credo of individualism and freedom of enterprise. He will long be remembered. As the American road became better, the cars that drove along it began to change. They became larger and heavier, lower and longer. The highway had become an extension of the city street, and people began to demand boulevard comfort and luxury in their transportation. Balloon tires and shock absorbers took the roughness out of driving. Interiors were the Ritz. Some even had a crystal vase to hold a single elegant flower. Henry Ford saw the trend and began making the Lincoln, one of the finest and most luxurious cars in the world. Alongside of such grandeur, the old Model T began to look more and more like a country cousin. The times had changed, and the car that had changed them was no longer needed. Henry Ford decided to stop producing it. In May, the 18 millionth Model T came out of the plant. And the assembly line closed down forever on the world's most famous car. From then on, the old flivver began to disappear from the roads. As old cars were turned in, they were taken back to the plant. There they were scrapped. Their steel was salvaged for use in the new models. Once in a while, a car would balk at the mouth of the furnace as though in a last effort to save itself. The Model T died hard. Although the Model T began to fade from the American scene, the impetus and the new direction it gave to our way of life did not stop there. It gathered momentum that carried us through the gay 20s.
The gay 20s?
Even the grim depression of the 30s could not stop the powerful forces that had been in motion. The lessons learned from the assembly line and mass production helped us to win a long and terrible war. nothing has been able to stop us. We have kept on working, kept on building. And today, this is how the American road looks. The whole nation has become swift and mobile, flowing along over a great network of highways more than 3 million miles long and constantly growing. The American road has lifted itself high above the muddy ruts of 50 years ago. The road has bridged the gulf between city and country. Their ways of life have mingled, and both share the fruits of progress equally. Machines have taken the burden of work from the back of the farmer. No longer do the women on the farms grow old before their time. And the people of the cities have been able to move out into quiet communities full of sun and fresh air that seem almost like living in the country. The old country schoolhouse has vanished, and the energy of the children is no longer wasted in walking miles to get there. The worker of today no longer has to live close to the plant that employs him. His home is in pleasant surroundings, and he drives to work. Every car on the American road, every new building that towers against the sky is a sign of our progress towards a better way of life. But perhaps the most wonderful thing about the American road is the freedom it gives us. You've only to get in your car and start driving to feel it. The American road. What magnificent vistas open up before us as we travel along it. We have come a long way since the quadricycle and the Model T. In 50 short years, our whole way of life has changed. We have accomplished much, but the achievements to come will dwarf our own. The American road stretches ahead of us, always towards a new horizon. We are all traveling along that road, all moving forward towards an even better tomorrow.
And so that is it. That is yet another section of Ford. And that's going to be it for today's show, because we're over 2 hours, and I like to keep them right at 2 hours. I was hoping to get another 12, 13 years, but that didn't happen. So, so there's one more. Well, there's one more Ford video, and we'll definitely get that in the next one, because I think that one's hella interesting too. And I really like the old videos. But so if it's your first time here, we do this usually every Sunday. I might switch it to Wednesday. I'll probably throw a poll up. I think I like it a little bit better on Wednesday. But we'll see. We'll see for sure. I have a blast doing this. I love my city. I love where I grew up. I love everything about it. And I truly enjoy getting to share it with everyone else. I do think that it's a magnificent place, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So, but with that said, that's going to be it for, we got 10 years. I feel like that's plenty. Like I said, it's going to slow down as we get more and more events that kind of take place. And obviously the Ford issue or the Ford period of time was a big period of time for this city in this area. So next week we'll get into Great Migration, some more car manufacturers and automotive manufacturing. We'll get into the first strike, a bunch of buildings, that kind of stuff. So, as always, it will be a fun one. So, very much so. Fuck Whitmer, but other than that, great state. Just get past the late 70s Ford Mustang. Doesn't remember producing it. But, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for me this evening. Please hit that thumbs up on your way out. Please subscribe if you're not. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. And I will catch you all again very, very soon. Take care, everybody.